we're looking at Brightspace Portfolio, particularly looking at how we might use this on the elementary side. And there's a lot of cool things, especially that you might not be aware of, that have just been added since January that I've been kind of messing around with and I'm really excited about. So without any further ado, I'm just going to do a quick territorial acknowledgement to start our session. This one's particularly really interesting for me. It's from Wes Fine Day. He's really cool guy, and he's got a really cool video. And I'm just gonna, it's a 20-minute video, and he shares about his life and his experiences and his wisdom. But I'm just gonna give you like a 2-minute snippet. We want to watch that together, and then we'll get started.
Police, doctors, and nurses, teachers were the only ones that would come on the reserve that we would see. And the police were always looking for somebody to haul away. Nurses wanted to jab needles in you. Teachers wanted to haul you to school and brainwash you, and so we learned to become really afraid of white people. When we heard a vehicle, you know, we'd all, as kids, run for the bush and go and hide. But sometimes, you know, they would beat us, and we'd end up being hauled away. Well, my name is Wes Fine Day is what people call me. The documents say Wesley, and in the lodge, when I go and communicate with spirits, when they come in and they address me, they say Papampito. And also to the spirits, I am the wandering human. And to the government, I'm Wesley Fine Day, or Wes Fine Day to people who are more familiar with me. But, you know, I'm a storyteller. I'm a musician, I'm a songwriter. I've been to Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Japan, either lecturing or teaching about oral history and the origins of oral history, which is right back to the moment of the first sound. Like the moment of the first explosion, the great explosion in the cosmos.
I'm going to stop there. This is a really cool video. What I'm going to do is share that in the tab, in the chat, sorry, in the tab. It's about 20 minutes long. I really encourage you to check it out and listen to his story. With that in mind, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which I live and work are the lands traditionally used by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. I acknowledge that I live and work on land situated on the Haldimand Tract, lands promised to the Six Nations that includes 10 kilometers on each side of the Grand River. I also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. So we are all treaty people with the responsibility to honor all our relations. Let's get into the agenda. I know it's kind of an abrupt transition, but for the sake of time, we'll keep going. I imagine you guys are discussing some stuff related to just picking up on the context, maybe Indigenous people, which is something that's near and dear to my heart as well. So I'm going to awkwardly transition, which is probably not a bad thing, because it should be something difficult for us to think about. So anyway, we're going to get into portfolio here. This is our agenda for today. And look at portfolio and how you might set it up, you know, adding expectations to your Brightspace, and then going ahead to using portfolio in its various facets to gathering evidence. I'm going to reach a little bit past summer school here as well, because I believe there's ways in which we can really apply this tool in in the class throughout the year. And then we're going to look at assessing expectations once you've gathered evidence, and then how you might provide feedback all through portfolio. And then the clutch piece, I think, which is really the big important thing here for that's new, is this mastery view, and how this can give us a tool to organize, assess all, not all, but the evidence, our portfolios, and it's not just something that's sitting in a pile, whether it's real or digital. Sitting in a pile somewhere, it's really difficult to look at. So let's keep going here. This is the thing with assessment that we are always kind of dealing with, and I've been kind of hinting at it a bit, is that this idea that we're constantly gathering information, and then when we're gathering all this stuff, we get a big pile, and we just like, we'll figure out what to do with it later. And there's this big panic to keep gathering and to keep gathering stuff. So with that being said, we are dealing with this dilemma of, looking at assessment, looking at triangulation of assessment, product, observation, conversation. And this dilemma is, we tend to lean towards product because we can stamp something in it and put it in our spreadsheet or grade book. And we have a hard time gathering observations and conversations in a way that we can funnel into meaningful data, or, we can, at the end of the term, turn it into an evaluation adequately without having to sift through tons of stuff. And that's through many conversations I've had, that's a big problem that we face dealing with assessment. And then looking at going forward and how we, there's a lot of initiatives that we are trying to engage in experiential learning, looking at an inquiry, looking at student voice and choice, and integrating that into our programs. All these things require a tool that's going to help us gather evidence, and then also be able to assess our evidence well, so that at the end of the term, or not even at the end, as we go along, we can see where our students are at, respond to that, but also at the end of the term, we can actually evaluate, look back and say, hey, this is what it all funnels down into. So that's the big conundrum here for us, the dilemma. So we're going to talk about how portfolio and mastery view is going to kind of help us through this dilemma together. I'm going to pause there. Does anybody have any questions about what we've talked about so far? Oh, Sandy, yes. I can hear a little bit of Sandy. I don't know if you're, okay, perfect. A little bit of, perfect. I don't know if it's muted here. Let me just, perfect. Okay. Do we have any questions so far about what? Okay, good. Just the way I run my presentations are usually like pretty easygoing, because a lot of it relates to problem solving together and getting, walking steps. So please unmute, interrupt, pop something in the chat. I'll hear it, dang, if I'm not looking at the Meet window, and let's get going. And sometimes, and I know it's hard to focus depending on what you're doing, but if you want to jump into your e-learning, let me go to my homepage here. I'll just drop this in the chat. If you want to jump into your Brightspace Hub while we're doing this, you're more than welcome to in a different tab, so that you can kind of see where I'm going and what I'm doing together. If that's not your style and you just want to focus, that's fine too, because this is going to be recorded and I'm going to have all the presentation stuff available for you. Okay, so let's look at adding expectations. So I'm going to jump into my VLE sandbox. You can jump into any one of your Brightspace classrooms, whether it's a summer school one or a previous one that you've had before. If I go to content, I can see my expectations here, and I can access expectations. There's a few ways to access expectations. I've actually, for my teacher nav bar, made a little shortcut, because I know I'm going to be going in there and messing around with it and adding criteria and things for it often. So whether you go from here that you've made a nav bar link, or there, right? And if you want to change this into an app bar link, I can show that. I can show that to you later on really easily. Any link in Brightspace can be turned into an app bar link with an icon that you downloaded from the internet and the link itself. So we're going to look at add or remove expectations, because initially, like, I have a bunch of expectations here because I've already put them in. But if you haven't put in a bunch of expectations, you're going to look at adding and removing, because this will be blank. So you're going to click on add or remove expectations. And in here, you can add an expectation that you are going to put in yourself. So type in yourself. So if I click add expectation, it's just a blank, and I can type in the success criteria I'm looking at. This is super useful if you're making some success criteria with your class together, right? And maybe you would do this not to very specific things, but maybe a broader success criteria. The key here is, just because we're going to look at math review later, when you're making expectations, you label them in a way that is organized for you, because it'll be all in this list. So if I want to look at math topic 3, and I might be dealing with, representing, I'm just making this up, topic 3 might not be representing decimal. So I can create something like that, right? I'm going to go cancel here. Or I'm going to scroll all the way up. I can pull something from the Achievement Standards Network, which basically is from the curriculum. You have to select the jurisdiction. Can you see the pop-up window?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
perfect.
we can see it.
Oh, perfect. Because sometimes you can't see it, and I want to make sure you can. Okay, so you can, we are in Ontario. So if you scroll all the way down to O, Ontario French or Ontario, and then you can select a subject. I want to look at language, K to 1 to 8, and then you'll notice that it defaults to adding everything. I might want to look at a specific grade. So maybe I want to look at grade 5. And then I can look at when I'm adding, if I select this, it adds everything, including specific expectations. Now, you can do whatever you want, depending on your judgment and your style. I don't recommend adding all the expectations if you're looking at Portfolio Master Review, because it can be overwhelming. It can be like tons and tons of expectations to sift through. So really recommend looking at the overalls. So I can go through and I can click overall expectation pieces that I'm interested in and import selected. So that is super helpful, because it helps you have flexibility in your assessment. And under the overall, I'll show you, there's if you wanted to add specific things that is tailored to your classroom, or the activity that you're engaged in, or the inquiry that you're going through, you can do that. When you add specific expectations, it can really funnel things down. And then when you're assessing and creating a master review table, it can be overwhelming, because you'll have tons and tons of expectations to scroll through, and some of them might not have meaningful data. So focused on overall expectations. Okay, so I'm gonna cancel this, because I think I've already got this for grade 6 imported here, but I'm gonna look at what I've got important just to double check, so I can see all my subject strands. Got spatial sense. I want to look at media, oral. All right, so I've got the overall expectations and then one specific one here. So if I wanted to go on, these arrows are really handy. Listen in order to understand and respond appropriately in a variety of situations for a variety of purposes. If I want to add a lower level expectation to this, because I want to, we've discussed something specific in my class, and we've done some mini lessons on it and some conversations on it. I want to look at that together. I can do that, and you can actually do this, share this with your class, as like you project it with your class, and you can co-create some of these expectations that are going to be assessed. This is what we're looking for in your portfolio content over the next number of weeks and months. We've talked about this and developed it together, and I can type whatever the example is, sample oral sub expectation. I'm just going to type that for my reference. To make it easier to search, I often would want to put the subject, the strand, so that when you're searching to tag something in your portfolio, which we'll see later, it'll make it easier. So organizing your expectations in a way that you can quickly find them makes life so much easier later. So I'm going to save that just so that we know that it's there. And then that is how you add expectations to your course. Expectations can be connected to not just portfolio, but anything else that is assessment connected. Rubrics, assignments, all this stuff you can put expectation to. Portfolio is really the focus that I want to take right now, because it allows us to do those pedagogical moves that are really, really, really important and gets us away from product-centered assessment. Okay, I'm going to pause there. Does any questions about that? All right. I'm assuming your silence is good, so I'm just going to keep. I know it is. That's fine. That's great. Thank you. So, so we've done the adding expectations. By the way, I might have mentioned this, but these slides and this video recording is going to be available on the Summer School main site, also in the Summer School Elementary Hub. So don't worry about having to remember all of this. Next piece is, now that we've done that, we're going to gather evidence. So this gets really cool. I get really excited about this. Okay, we're going to click on portfolio. So under portfolio, I have some like helper students, but also these cool fake ones that I have here. I'm going to look at just a pile of evidence. Different students are on it. There's a few ways to get evidence into here. So a student can log in to their Brightspace in their portfolio on a Chromebook or a laptop and actually just dump any kind of evidence from their laptop. It could be a screenshot, it could be a Google Drive item, it could be pretty much anything can get put in there. So here's Lisa. Here's some work she's done. She's taking a picture of her laptop.
Ron, sorry to interrupt. We can't see your screen right now.
Oh, I'm still on the. Okay, let me go back. Let me go. I'm still on the presentation. I didn't switch my tab over. Okay, so I clicked on portfolio here. Sorry about that. Thank you for letting me know. So I click on portfolio. I've got my students in my classroom. I can look at it by student, or I can look at it just a pile of evidence. Let's look at Lisa Simpson. She's got all this stuff that she's put into her portfolio. So the thing about portfolio that's really cool is I, as a teacher, can put content, add to Lisa's portfolio, whether I'm adding from my Chromebook or from a device, which I'll show you really quickly. I can log into my portfolio app, which is this little guy here. And I can add content into my classroom as a teacher. If Lisa has a device at home, she can add content. If Lisa's family has a device, they can add content to different students that they have. We can have a classroom device, whether it's an iPad or something with a camera, and we can use that and add content to our portfolio. So it's really cool because it's tailored to be like, you can put things into your portfolio from a variety of different places in a variety of different forms. So it could be, video, picture, anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a snapshot of my coffee, because this is the amazing assignment that I'm doing and I'm logged in by default as a teacher. So I can take this, it shows my snapshot of my coffee. I'm going to upload it. When I upload it from my teacher device, so if you're in a classroom, again, remote learning is very different. It'll probably be, but if you're in a classroom and you're engaging conversation and you're capturing some of that conversation, you don't have to have a full-on video recording of what you said. It could be like a snapshot and some anecdotal notes to remind you of the conversation pieces and the piece that stood out to you. It could be a 5-second video of the student saying something. It could be, again, it could be a PDF. It could be so many different things. So I click on that. I'm going to choose the classroom that I'm putting this into, which is my VLE, and in my classroom, my students pop up, and you probably can't see that very well, but I'm going to click on Lisa, and I'm going to, and I can select multiple students if I want to put that on. If Lisa and Bart, if this is a video I got and it's a bunch of people talking, I can click on multiple students and it can drop it to different people's portfolios. I'm going to click done. And then when I refresh, I should see the coffee mug show up in Lisa's portfolio. There it is. So we can gather tons of different types of evidence from a variety of different places that look very different. We don't have to, you know, often we spend a lot of times as teachers, especially when I was supporting distance learning this year, we learned teachers spend a lot of time creating assignment content package thingies that are perfectly put together, and you've got all the right Bitmoji in the right places. You know, there's a lot of time put into that. And then on the other side, maybe, you know, the student engaged with that package, maybe they don't, and maybe the engagement is really quick. They're like, oh, done, boom. And there's been a lot of like teachers and educators have been disheartened about the amount of work they put into something and the reaction it got. And so we've had a lot of conversations on how do you integrate the choice, the voice, the openness, the engagement level. This is one way in which, and then the problem that created was, how do I assess these things in a meaningful way when I've got students doing all kinds of stuff in all kinds of places? So this is kind of going to funnel all that into a way of doing it that makes sense. So here's Lisa's work. Over time, you would gather lots and lots of evidence, and there's ways to organize that evidence we're going to get into next. So we've talked about gathering evidence. I'm going to pause there. Any questions about how you might gather things into portfolio?
I have one question. So let's say I want to tag the coffee was a project for science and it was part of oral language. Can I drop that photo into both subjects?
Yeah.
Like I fed it to two kids, and can I feed it to two subjects at the same time?
Yes, you can. So
Okay.
But the organization isn't that you wouldn't have a multiple of this in another subject. You just have this as a portfolio item, and what it'll be like, it can have any number of expectations on it. So you might have a science expectation, you might have a math expectation, and a language expectation all on this portfolio, and all assessed on this portfolio. And what Master Review will do is it'll funnel any expectation. Let's say you're looking at language, the oral one that we made. You might have portfolio items from multiple places and multiple times getting attached to that expectation, and Master Review will take all of that and show you one snapshot, which is really cool and very exciting for me. So yeah, good question. Thank you. Okay, so we've gathered some evidence. Now we're going to assess, this is kind of leading into what you were asking, we're going to assess those expectations. So I'm going to jump into this coffee portfolio item. So the cool thing about this, there's a number of features in here. So once I put this in and put it into Lisa's portfolio, Lisa can actually go and upload something that she's speaking to. So there's a way in which you can do this where even as a teacher, if I'm uploading content, she can speak to it, or she can upload some content and go back and reflect on some things that she's done, or she can upload content and like right away sit down and start reflecting, adding her thoughts to it. And she can do that by typing a reflection, adding audio. I can add a category to her work. So if I want to kind of have quick tags for things, they're not assessment, they're just like, I want to categorize them so I can quickly search and say, you know, we're doing a big project on the environment and I want to tag everything on environmental issues because I want to kind of look at all of that together for Lisa. I can add a tag and I can create all kinds of tags. There's some preloaded tags that come because of kindergarten in our system, but I can also go to category manager and do that. And that's not assessment related, it's just like organizationally. You notice that Lisa can also add categories. So if Lisa's like, hey, I want to have categories for things that are this and that and that, it's kind of cool because students are really taking ownership of their learning, right? They're creating things themselves in which they're sharing it with the teacher, and the teacher's giving them feedback, but it's also their own. And they're able to go back, improve it, change it, add to it, which is really cool. Oh, hands up. I think I heard a ding.
Yes, it was me.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah, go.
So just to clarify, so let's say I have 2 kids working on this project. I flag it for both of them and it feeds it in. Can I flag the expectation at the same time, like when I put it in, or do I have to go back into each item after?
So it's designed so that you have to go in. And this is something I've put in a request for D2L to give you that functionality, but I think they're usually really quick to say yes. There's some things that they said yes really quickly, like searchable expectations. It's a bit of a dilemma because you might be working on something together. It's good to have that functionality, but I think initially their design-wise, you might have a portfolio piece of evidence that applies to a number of students, but you might be looking at very different things. This is like the ability to differentiate. You might be looking at, for Lisa versus Bart, it might be the same video, but you might be looking at Bart's oral intensively in that. But for Lisa, you might just be looking at her knowledge of environmental issues. You know what I mean? So I think they initially designed it to deter teachers from going back, because it's not an assignment, right? Because you can do that in assignments, but they want to kind of pull away from assignments where you're not creating this dump thing where everyone's looking at the same expectation. So the idea is the onus is on the teacher to notice different expectations for different teachers. But I've still put in a request because it's like, it might be nice because it would save time, right? Because they're like, there's going to be, like, if you're looking at environmental issues and, 65% of my students are doing this thing, it would be nice to just go boom, tag, 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 tag. Also, to be able to do that on your mobile device would be nice to add the expectation.
Yeah.
Because while you're moving around the room, right, that's kind of how I would like to do it, but they haven't added that yet. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really great feature when I used Seesaw a few years ago teaching kindergarten, to be able to do that. And then what you're saying, like, let's say one was math, one was oral, I can go back and edit that after if need be, but it's so much quicker to do it first than going in each item.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thanks for putting the request in.
Oh, my pleasure. I'll let you know if anything changes. They've been pretty good at responding to things, but sometimes their priorities might be different, so they'll be like, they'll put it on the back burner. Great question. Thank you. So that's kind of the left side of this window is what Lisa is putting in. The right side is this column is the teacher feedback. So I can type a teacher feedback for her. I can add a rubric. So in Brightspace, if I've created rubrics, or if I want to create a rubric, because this is something that I'm going to assess via rubric, totally works. But this is the part that's new, and well, I guess it's been around, but it gets me really excited, is I can add an expectation. So in this part, all the expectations for my classroom that I've added are show up here. Now I can scroll through, but this search feature is new, and it's super handy. So I wanted to look at language, oral. Oh, I misspelled language. So here's my language oral that I just made because I searched for that. Sweet. So I'm going to tag that. And if I wanted to tag, I think I had one called math topic. Math topic 1. Perfect. I want to tag that. All right. And then I'm going to save. You'll notice then my internet's being slow. There it is. So I've got a leveled spot for this portfolio where I can say, hey, math topic 1 is good, but oral needs some work. All right. This is also interesting. I can add a private note to the other teachers in my classroom. So I can say, Lisa was really disheartened when working. I might put a note in there, and I can put it in for myself. I can make it this little visible button makes it visible, not for students or for Lisa, but visible for other teachers that are added to my course. It's a great way of communicating, you know, student well-being or student feedback that's not necessary for the student, but an observation piece for myself. So I can add that, and it's there. The cool thing that I'm hoping they'll turn on soon is parent sharing. So if we had, it's not turned on for our system, but if this was like, whoa, this is really cool, Lisa, like improved so much in this piece, I can share this with parents, which is really cool, right? And then it'll show up in the parent portal Brightspace for them and say, hey, here's a work that from Lisa's portfolio that Lisa's teacher has shared with you. It's really, really cool. But it hasn't been turned on yet, and hopefully it will be soon. So that's kind of like,
ask another question. Sorry.
Yeah.
So when you're for the feedback sections where you can type a comment or the teacher comment, is it compatible with voice typing, like with Mote, etc.?
Oh, that's a good question. Is Mote an extension on your?
Yeah,
phone?
Mote is a voice note extension that you can use in like slides, docs, Gmail, etc.
Yeah, I imagine it would be because it's a text box, but I have not tested it out. So I will add it to my list to try out because I'm actually really curious about that. M-O-T-E, Mote?
Yeah, Mote like note.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be, so it would be text to speech, speech to text.
Correct.
Yeah, so you can talk quickly and add something without having to type it all. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll check that out. If it's a functionality in extension in a web, like any, so what that, usually what they would do is it would search for any text box, and any text box would have the capacity to put it in. But I haven't tried, I can't guarantee because I haven't tested it out on D2L. That's a good question.
Thanks.
Oh, my pleasure. So we've got that done. We've assessed those expectations. We've provided some feedback using Portfolio. And now we're going to jump into Mastery View. But before we do, are there any questions about what we've done so far? Oh, perfect. Maybe I'll touch base with Loretta. Thank you, Sarika. That's great. Okay, so please interrupt if there are any questions. I actually like that. So that's kind of my style. All right, we're going to go back to this. Now that I've put this stuff in, I'm going to go to, I made a link for Mastery View here in my nav bar because I really think it should be forefront. But if you're looking for it in your Brightspace, it's going to be under grades. So we click on grades. Now in elementary, grade books aren't our thing, so we probably won't have a lot of grades here, but if you do, that's fine. But really the mastery view of grades is what we want, because grades doesn't pull anything from Portfolio, mastery view does. So I've assessed language oral. You can see that. I can find that really quickly. All my expectations are listed here. They're all here. One of the reasons why you don't want to assess specific expectations right off the bat when you're starting with this is that you're going to have a million columns and they're all going to be filled in little tiny bits. But if you're looking at overall expectations, it's much, much better. And it's tailored for, you know, being responsive to students. So Map Topic 1 has a bunch of assessment in it. And this little bar up here shows me a really good data field of where my students are at. I've got a bunch of level 3s, a couple of level 2s, and a couple of level 4s, no level 1s. Really cool to see that percentage. And it allows me to quickly small group, right? So I can look at who's at level 2, my level 2 friends, like George needs help here, so I can small group them for a specific expectation. I can actually get into it. So these numbers show you the amount of activities that are connected to this expectation. So Lisa has 4 activities. Bart has 2. Jillian has 2. George has 2, and Lisa Hignall has 1. So these are just, it's a really good way of looking at it in an overview that tells me what's going on for that expectation for my class. Also really great when I'm looking at writing report cards, right? So I'm going to jump into Lisa Simpson because we've done a lot of stuff for her. Let's look at what we did for language oral sample. If I click on that, it actually opens up this section that shows me trends in that expectation. Now, I've only done it once. Tells me when I did it, tells me it's an overall achievement expectation that was connected to it. And this is the one untitled piece of evidence that they have. Usually when we put it in, I can title the portfolio piece of evidence if I want, might not, but this little briefcase is an indicator that it's a portfolio. Mass Review actually pulls from assignments, and it pulls everything, which is really cool. So it could be a rubric item, it'll have a different icon, and the yellow shows this total 1 of assignment. What it'll do is Mass Review just kind of looks at all the data and says, what's the most recent, what's the more recent and most occurring, assessment value, and it'll give you that. If I want to go, you know what, that wasn't a level 2 because, well, actually, let's look at Lisa's math topic for that because she has a lot more. She's got 4 pieces of assessment. So you can see she's got a bunch of July ones and 1 in June. These are all really recent. There's all these different portfolio items over time. And level 3 is what it says is the most recent and more occurring. If I want to manually override that algorithm and say that, I don't want that, I actually think she's a level 4 student, I can actually do that. So at the end of the term, when you're looking at evaluating students, and putting report cards together, you have control over that. Another spot to give feedback as well. This is so helpful because it gives us that ability to funnel all that tons and tons of portfolio evidence and really engaging, exciting, fun, inquiry-driven things. I've talked to a number of teachers, really great teachers that are working hard to create those environments of learning and thinking and inquiry, but always struggle when they're like, man, at the end of the term, when I have to do report cards, I just have so much stuff to sift through, and it's just overwhelming. I think this is going to help us with that. Also, during the term, it gives us an opportunity to look at what's happening with our class, with our expectations. Why is this expectation like that? Am I doing something wrong? I need to adjust something. And then do I need to go to a mini lesson for this for my class? Do I need to go to small group? All that kind of stuff is really, really handy. So that's like big picture Mass Review connected to portfolio. And I think those 2 pieces are going to be very helpful moving forward for solving some assessment issues for us. I'm going to stop there. Are there any questions so far? Doo-doo.
Not a question really, but just to share that having used mostly Google Classroom with my classes, I'll admit that I'm relatively new with the D2L platform. And so this has been really helpful just to see the possibilities and the potential that this has for, a lot of students, a lot of teachers. So this has been great. Thank you.
Awesome. Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. I totally was in the same Andrew boat. I've been using Google Classroom for a long time. Started with Brightspace a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago. But I always found that Brightspace, there's something that bothered me about it because it's like somebody took something designed for secondary students at best and is trying to stuff it into the elementary world, right? And for the longest time, I just would go back and forth. But when they started working on portfolio, I'm like, okay, we're on the right track. And then when they started they just put it in just January. When they put in Mass Review, I'm like, okay, nobody in elementary is really doing grade books. But like Mastery View, that makes sense. We can use that. So yeah, I've had a very similar journey. So it's hopefully going to be very useful. And I've been in the ed tech kind of messing around, looking for things. Not that I'm an expert, just looking for tools for a long time to do that. I'm really into portfolios and digital, stuff, but to connect that with, okay, now do I have to sift through my Google Drive with thousands of videos at the end? No, I'm not going to have to. So something that can put those together is really, hopefully that'll be helpful.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's great.
Awesome. Thanks for coming. I understand it's like a crazy busy week, and I really appreciate you all being here.